Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. So I'm always thinking, how can I save the world for my daughters? Which, as parents, it's what we naturally think throughout the day when we contemplate our lives and how we're raising our kids and what kind of adults they'll make and what kind of society will they lord over. And of course, whenever I hear about TikTok trends, it scares the living crap out of me because this is where most kids, most teenagers get their news. Not just teenagers, people in their 20s and 30s. Don't kid yourself. So there's a new trend. And it's always interesting because people on TikTok are, narcissistic and solipsistic, and they think that the only thing they can know is themselves. So they have to know it completely and share that knowledge with the world. It's very deep. So it doesn't matter what the trend is, they always think they invented it. So the latest trend is being a stay-at-home girlfriend, an SAHG, which I guess means SAG. And, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post interviewed a bunch of young women who are influencers and who claim to be stay-at-home girlfriends. And they talk about how much better their lives are because they don't work. They just devote their lives to their boyfriends, which sounds really boring and tedious if, your life revolves around slathering masks and serums and expensive moisturizers. And then you go work out. This, of course, is after making breakfast for your boyfriend. You walk your tiny dog, and that's the end of your day. So, and this is supposed to be a fulfilling, ideal way for young women to live, which, these young women, they're in their 20s, they're in super good shape, they're super hot, and they essentially are TikTok prostitutes because that's what they are selling. They're selling their brand, but their brand is really, their own meat sack over which they have agency. And, as a libertarian, you should be allowed to engage in any transaction that you want as long as both parties are consenting and no one is being taken advantage of. And they are certainly consenting parties. But what they are selling is, I don't have to do anything. My boyfriend pays for everything. And in one of the videos, one of the young women is, kind of shuffling a big stack of 100. She's like, this is the money my boyfriend gave me because I have to pay off my credit card. And it's like, that the novelty of that is probably very alluring in the beginning because it's like, man, here's this hot chick who makes me pancakes and she just sits around all day getting hotter and she's there for me when I get home, and that's what I want. I want a woman who does absolutely nothing. But if you are a driven person, at some point at the end of the day, you're going to get really bored going home and hearing about this young woman's bar class or her yoga routine and her moisturizing line of products that she spent your money to slather for an hour. That's going to get boring after a while. So if the guy just wants a thing who looks good and acts as a servant, that's basically an object because he is objectifying her. And then at some point, he's going to get bored of her because she has nothing to talk about. But I look at this and I'm like, is feminism dead? Like, have these young women, have they never talked to their grandmothers? Have they never heard stories about their great grandmothers and the fact that they couldn't get into college, they couldn't get into law school, they might have had dreams, they might have had natural intelligence, but they weren't allowed to realize any of that because the world and all its systems were set against them. And then women had to fight for their place in sports and in various professions like medicine. And eventually, they went to medical school and they were groundbreaking and just as smart as the boys. And by gum, isn't this a great world? But they have totally given up. So now they're telling younger, more impressionable young women, like, don't go to college, just look hot and a guy will pay for everything, which is great. But the problem is, you have not entered into a legal partnership. So if he sees you as an object, he can discard you. And then what kind of life do you have when, as a SAG, you start to sag? You don't have anything. You don't have any financial resources. You don't have any skill that you have worked for in a trade school or a college. You probably don't have a financial nest egg of your own because if you're busy buying stuff to sell your life as an influencer, chances are you invested your money in items that, devalue very quickly. and then you're left with a bunch of handbags and debt and no boyfriend and a reputation as a prostitute because you've been selling yourself as a stay-at-home girlfriend, which, after a few trips around the block as a town bicycle, not entirely attractive. So you show up as arm candy with another guy at another event, and someone's like, "Oh, I remember her. She was Troy's prostitute for a year." And the guy's all embarrassed and red faced, and he discards you once again. My advice is, if you're going to go to college, go get an engineering degree. Go do something cool. Go get a degree in AI and make millions and millions of dollars in your own money. And then when you're done with school and you're gainfully employed and you're creating your nest egg, that makes you even more attractive, because chances are, if it's important to you to be hot, you still worked out in college, but then you emerge with a great body and a beautiful brain. I can think of nothing more attractive and nothing more humiliating for a woman than to be an object that is eventually discarded with nothing to show for it, because you don't have a ring, you don't have a marriage, you don't have a family. You probably did not have kids with this person, because if he's all about you staying home, he's just all about him. And he's not going to want to share your affection with children. Now, eventually, when you are a multimillionaire and you've gone to school and gotten your degree in AI and you work in tech and you learn to game that system, because that's obviously what you're into, and then you want to have kids, then go be a stay-at-home mom. That's fantastic. That's when you take all of your energy and you put it into tiny beings who need your devotion. And that's when you can live the traditional part of your life. The only thing traditional about the stay-at-home girlfriend trend is it's prostitution. And they call it the world's oldest profession because you guys aren't the ones who stumbled into it. This has been happening forever. And, we are almost pre-designed in order to seek out resources. But guess what? Go ahead and buck evolutionary biology, create your own resources, be your own boss. And that way you have a proliferation of choices, because there is nothing more attractive than someone who is self-made and loving in equal measure versus someone who is an object, who is wholly dependent upon someone else, because after a short while, those relationships become very, very unattractive. So to my girls, in order to save your own world, make your own world, make your own choices, and then go out there and enter into a relationship with an equal. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.
Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.